and welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zautke, and joining me today from Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, it is David Hobbs. David, so good to talk to you again. And I guess the fans want to know, how have you been doing?
Well, always good to talk to you too, Steve, as well, and your fans. I've been doing pretty well, really. Obviously, nobody did anything much last year, so virtually no races to go to, no shows, no concourse, everything was cancelled. My biggest mission now, I've retired, really, is to try and sell as many of my books as I can. And I mean, not that it matters a hell of a lot, but be nice to sell them all. And last weekend at Road America for the IndyCar race, which was an absolutely fantastic race, I managed to sell 68. So I actually ordered more books for the rest of the season because I shall be going to the vintage race, obviously with Brian Redmond when he's there, and I shall be going to the IMSA race, and obviously the vintage race at the end of the year. So plenty of things going on up here in the summer. I have a couple of engagements in September and October in Detroit for the Hall of Fame at my usual Master Ceremonies gig, and there's a motorsports, what do you call it? Another big event up there at Pontiac, Michigan, in the first weekend in October. So I got plenty to do this summer, which is nice.
Very much so. And you were in New Mexico earlier this year and keeping busy with some stuff. So, you're not just sitting around with your feet up. You've been keeping busy, which is good. I'm sure the fans appreciate that. But don't look now. We actually have a championship fight in the world of Formula One.
Well, we do. And we don't. In some ways, I suspect that young Max is going to carry on his winning ways, because obviously the next race is a repeat of last week's in Styria, and I don't see how Max is not going to win it. I'm very torn. I'm a huge Hamilton fan. I think he's probably one of the finest drivers we've ever seen. But I have to be honest, of course, as an owner of David Hobbs Honda, 6100 North Nimba Avenue, Glendale, Wisconsin. It's nice to see a Honda leading the championship in matches at Red Bull. So I think it's going to go on. And I think that the Mercedes has turned out to be not so quick on the straight as the Red Bull, which is a complete turnaround from the last 5 or 6 years, because Red Bull have always concentrated on downforce. Now they still have good downforce, but Adrian Newey's magic, they have managed to lose some of their drag, which of course is always a huge conundrum. Do we want more downforce, or do we want more? And how are we going to get more downforce without too much drag? And they seem to have cracked that. And so the race after next week, it'll be Silverstone, home of Lewis Hamilton, home of the Mercedes team. In reality, their building is only about 5 miles from Silverstone. And I think that might be the first time the British fans, of which I believe there are going to be about 140,000 on Saturday and Sunday, are going to be massively disappointed. I don't see where they're going after Silverstone. I mean, you got Hungaroring. Well, the way Red Bull's going at the moment, the Hungaroring is going to be a slam dunk. Spa might be a bit more difficult. Monza might be a bit difficult. But I mean, boy, they are looking very, very good.
A couple of surprises so far, of course. Perez has looked good. I mean, he's a driver who's gone hot and cold in the past, and he's got to win this year. But Lando Norris is really starting to step up. And I'm thinking from maybe some feedback you've gotten from across the pond. I mean, Hamilton is obviously the king to the British racing fan, but Lando Norris must be kind of making some people excited over there, isn't he?
I think Lando Norris and George Russell in the Williams are making people very, very excited, and rightly so. Lando Norris, I mean, he's an animal. I mean, he doesn't care where he goes. I mean, he goes right around the outside. I mean, he wheel to wheel up to him means absolutely nothing. He's obviously very accomplished, and he's making Daniel Ricciardo who has been touted as a future world champion a number of times,
Mm-hmm.
and he's making him look bad. And I'm assuming that Ricciardo will pick up the pace. But I mean, yeah, Lando Norris is looking very good. George Russell, it's always so hard to tell because, you know, I mean, he's driving at Williams, but obviously we saw him in the Mercedes for, you know, a couple of races last year, and he was absolutely outstanding. So he's obviously very, very good. We got other good guys coming along, but I mean, those two are, you know, the old generation is going to have to move aside sooner or later.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, when you look at the standings, Lando Norris is over double the points that his teammate Ricciardo has. And, you know, I mean, we knew when people were kind of like looking skeptical when he made that move to Renault, but I think, let's face it, that was most likely a move for money too. They offered him a boatload of money. It didn't work out. So you thought, okay, he's going to McLaren. He might be able to resurrect his career. It seems like a good fit, but it just has not worked out, has it, for Ricciardo?
It hasn't. The most disappointing thing to me is, you know, Lando Norris qualified third and was looking absolutely fantastic. And yet in the race, in spite of driving like heck, he finished up a minute behind. I mean, he was lapped.
Mm-hmm.
Which there, you know, a lap is only like 1.7 seconds. But I mean, gosh almighty, you know, McLaren are the third best team out there at the moment. And they're so far off the pace with the same engines Mercedes got. So it's obvious that the top two teams are just sort of running away with it. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, McLaren are definitely catching up, but it is pretty sobering to know how far behind Lando Norris ended up when considering how well he went in qualifying. So for the year, I mean, you know, but I hope he continues to do what he's doing and finish well up in the championship. And McLaren, it'd be lovely to see them third again.
The team that I thought was absolutely going to fall on their face was Ferrari this year, and they have not. And Carlos Sainz and Leclerc, I think, from a talent point of view, are pretty darn close to each other. Both are hungry drivers. I think they both outperformed their cars. I'm wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I think you're probably right. And the other thing is that Carlos Sainz has probably come along as a rather unpleasant surprise to Charles Leclerc. He thought he was going to be absolutely runaway leader of the team, and that Sainz would take a bit to, just like Ricciardo was taking so long to get used to McLaren. I think everybody thought that Sainz would take a long time to get used to the Ferrari, but not so. I mean, he just jumped right in there. And is almost effectively the team leader already. So yeah, it's interesting situation. You say they haven't fallen on their face. They haven't actually fallen on their face, but they're not doing what people want Ferrari to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, they haven't been. You know, I always, you know, in the past, no matter how bad Ferrari did in the year, they would always seem to kind of, by the time Monza came around, they always would try and give them that little bit of extra and would somehow, if not win the race, of course, get a podium or outperform what they did the rest of the year. And that's something that they really can't do anymore with the current rules package.
No, exactly. And of course, one of the excuses that Mercedes are making towards their lack of performance compared to the Red Bull is that they are very well advanced on next year's car, which is a very different rules package, and that Red Bull are sort of so concerned with this year, they keep on making modifications of the car to make it faster, that they therefore must be neglecting next year's car. I don't necessarily agree with that. I you know, a well-organized team can do both, I would have thought. So the other guy, of course, has been a big surprise. It's not a big surprise, but continuing his upward trend was, of course, Gasly. At the beginning of the year, everybody was raving about Tsunoda, how he had won everything that he could, all the championships he'd done, and that he was going to be the new Lewis Hamilton. Well, it hasn't turned out that way at all, unfortunately, for him. But Gasly is performing extremely well. Most unfortunate last week to have his right rear wheel whipped off turn one, lap one. Not what he expected at all.
Yeah, Gasly is certainly, especially if the fans have watched the Netflix. I mean, it really kind of, I was surprised, and how basically when he was demoted from Red Bull, and how open they were with that, and how that has to feel with him. So you got to feel good for him that at least he's been able to kind of prove his value at AlphaTauri, and and it'll be interesting to see how he continues and what is what's going to happen to him in the future. Does he continue to stay there? Does he get an offer from another team or what?
Well, that's the thing. These days, drivers, in spite of the accident, in spite of the dangers of racing, drivers drive for teams for years and years and years. It's hard to displace them. Look at Kimi Raikkonen. I mean, talk about, over here and in the way. I mean, it's time Raikkonen gave up. And then, of course, you've got those tail enders like the Haas team. There's another driver that needs to shape up a little bit is Mick Schumacher, because Mazepin is generally regarded with no regard at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he gives Mick Schumacher a bit of a run for his money. Mick Schumacher should be out qualifying, out racing him by miles. And you've always got that problem with teammates. Obviously we're not expecting Mick Schumacher to win, but we are expecting him to absolutely just outclass his teammate enormously, like George Russell does Latifi. George Russell, the Williams team, the car does improve. It is improving. The gap between them and the front of the field is not what it was, but it's not getting much better, but it is improving slightly. The Alfa Romeo team seems to be a bit of a waste of time and cause. They're sort of in there, but Giovanni and Kimi Raikkonen seem to be pretty evenly matched. I think Giovanni is slightly quicker now, but it's very hard to tell. But Mick Schumacher, who so much is expected of him, which has been unfortunate for him. I mean, tremendous pressure. I don't know. He's got to step up the pace.
Yeah, it is, and I thought it was interesting too that with Red Bull, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, they're finally in a comfortable position with an engine manufacturer, and even though Honda is going to pull away, they're going to keep that engine and work on it themselves. I guess it'll be just the Red Bull team for next year, which if you think about it, you kind of step back and examine it. That's probably the smartest thing they could do at this point, isn't it?
Well, it's the only thing they could do. Mercedes aren't going to sell them an engine. And there's basically nobody else out there to sell them an engine unless Ferrari do. No, I think they're doing a very clever, and I think you'll find a number, I don't know how many, of the Honda guys will jump ship and join them in their engine department. Plus, they've got some good guys from Mercedes engine development coming over. So I think one way or another, they'll probably do a good job of that. And I think they'll get quite a bit of, tacit support from Honda. It'll be covert, but it'll be there all the same, I think.
Do you see in the next year or two another team coming in to Formula One?
No, I'm reading this morning, that Porsche and Audi are going to the next engine constructors meeting, but I don't know what that means really. Audi are coming back into world sports cars with their hypercar, which is budget of probably 100 million a year right there. Are they going to spend another couple of 300 million a year on Formula One as well? Probably not. But it'd be nice to think that somebody else would come in, because everybody keeps wanting Cosworth to come back, but the cost is so outrageous for these modern hybrid engines. It's pretty outrageous. Outrageous.
And I think you see with the Haas team, they're basically just hanging on until the new formula comes in next year. No matter how much money they would have really spent, unless money that they didn't have, they weren't going to improve that much. So why not just go out there, run your laps, maybe get a couple points and get some money at the end of the year for the constructors' points. But other than that, just holding on basically until next year.
That's why Gunter Steiner gets so mad when his guys get run into each other, because all they got to do is finish, and they get some money. But I'm absolutely amazed at Gene Haas. I mean, basically, all the money in that team comes from Gene Haas.
So true.
So how he can afford that is just, to me, is unfathomable. But he does, and he keeps on doing it.
He's got to be selling a lot of CNC machines over in Europe, because that was the reason why he did it. He said so. Yeah. All right. Final question, David. Talking with David Hobbs, of course, on the Traction Reaction podcast. Give us a prediction. Who's your top three on the way out for overall for the Formula One? Who do you think are the three strongest guys
for the year?
Yeah, or who's the three guys? Of course, it's Verstappen and Hamilton, but who's that third guy? Is it going to be Bottas, or can Lando Norris get in his head a little bit, you think?
Lando Norris hasn't got the machinery to beat Bottas, but I think he's a better driver. Although I was always a huge Bottas fan when he was driving for Williams. I mean, he did an outstanding job. And he is very good, but I think he's been totally demoralized by his teammate and by the team, who aren't helping him. But then he has the most horrendous luck. I mean, that wheel nut issue in Monte Carlo has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Then the spin in the pit lane last week, I mean, pretty unusual. I mean, but it would happen to him, right in front of God and everyone. But I think now, and obviously you got to put in there George Russell, even though he really has no hope in the championship.
Right.
And I think that and Pierre Gasly. I think those seem to be the four hot shoes, really. I think.
You think Mercedes would? Let's say Bottas just falls on his face the rest of the year, and it's just. Could you see Mercedes bringing up Russell for next year?
Oh, I can see him bringing him up for next year. The big question is, will they bring him up for this year?
Okay, yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think.
But it's a possibility. The other guy that's been a disappointment to me is Esteban Ocon. I mean, he runs hot and cold. Yeah. And I hope the team aren't sabotaging him, because on Friday in Austria, he was right up there. Then qualifying and in the race, he didn't do anything. And of course, it makes Alonso look good. But I don't think Alonso personally is a great addition to the Formula One scene myself. But there it is.
It's kind of like with Meyer Shank with Elio Castro Neves. I interviewed Elio before the 500. I said, did they bring you in to show the team how to win? And I wonder if that was one of the reasons why, or Big Stroll brought in, a Vettel to Aston Martin to show, hey, this is how you win. This is how you be world champion.
Maybe. I don't know. I think he brought him in because he just wanted somebody like that in the team. And obviously, hopefully, he would hope that he would coach the kid a bit. Mm-hmm. Although Lance Stroll actually goes pretty well. Is he great? Probably not great, but he's certainly good. Very good. But of course, if you had $30 million spent on your racing career since you're about 12 every year, I mean, yeah, you are good. You tend to be. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Steve. Well, good to talk to you. And you know me anytime. I'm available. Right.
We'll be in touch. Thank you, David. And we'll talk to you again on the Traction Reaction podcast.